Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about my birth plan. So it's a little different this time around. So this is baby number 2 for my husband and I. And with my first child, I did not like write up a birth plan. This time I actually wrote up a birth plan. It's a pretty good one. It's pretty lengthy. It's about 4 pages long. I made multiple copies to give to the doctors and nurses. And I just have a different mentality, I guess, maybe now that it's my second child. It's the second time around for me. I didn't write up a birth plan with my daughter because, I don't know, I just felt like, you can have a plan in your mind, but it obviously, especially during birth, does not always mean it's going to go that way. And I didn't want to have like my hopes set on like a certain birth plan that I wanted and then it just completely go the opposite direction, which ultimately was what happened with my daughter. So just a little backstory. She's 3 years old now, and I would have probably wanted a birth similar to the one that I have written down that I'll share with you today, but I ended up having a C-section after 50 hours of labor with her due to failure to progress. It was an extremely traumatizing situation for me, just the whole thing. And I have a video that goes into detail about my birth experience having her, so you guys can refer back to that if you want to know more about how her actual birth went. But it was an extremely traumatizing situation. So this time I have my regular OBGYN, and I've also hired a doula, which my doula has been great. She's very helpful. However, given the circumstances of the world that we live in right now during this pandemic, we are only allowed to have one person come to the hospital with us, and that will obviously be my husband. So my doula, unfortunately, will not be able to come. However, I do want to share, the birth plan that we have written up and kind of what I've been thinking. I've done a lot of research this time around, and so I don't know. I'm trying to get excited, but I'm really nervous, to be honest with you. I think I just need like a good healing birth experience from my last. So I would love to have a home birth. Because given my circumstances and having a previous C-section and it just being totally traumatizing, that's just not in the cards for me right now. So anyways, let's get into the birth plan. And if you were curious, I will just mention today I am 35 weeks and 4 days pregnant. So it's getting close. Got my birth plan ready. So the idea with me going into labor this time is that hopefully it will be spontaneous labor. I really do not want to be induced, though my doctor has already mentioned induction with me given the size of my daughter. So she was 8.5 pounds and 21.25 inches long. And she's a bigger size baby, but she wasn't like huge. She just wasn't. I progressed to 9 centimeters with her, and then I stopped progressing. I sat at 9 centimeters for 8 hours, and she was just in a weird position. She didn't have room to move or like turn, so she just couldn't drop any further, and that led to my C-section ultimately. And because I've had now a C-section, my OBGYN would like to keep the baby at around 8 pounds if possible. So she's recommending that I am induced at 39 weeks. At this point, I do have like a growth scan. I don't know that I really trust the growth scans. With my daughter, they did do a growth scan at about 37 weeks, and they estimated her to be around 7 pounds. She was 8.5. So this time around, I have my growth scan scheduled for about 38 weeks. I think it's the day I turned 38 weeks. And we'll see what they say. I mean, I will definitely try to do some natural remedies starting probably at 37-ish weeks, 38, to try and encourage labor to happen naturally. But I was a week late with my daughter, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. But the idea would be that I go into spontaneous labor, and that it is pretty much completely natural and drug-free with no like Pitocin or anything like that. I don't want an epidural. I really would love to be able to like get up and move around and help baby move down. I got an epidural with my daughter, and I can't help but think that maybe had I not gotten the epidural, and I didn't get it till I was 7 centimeters, so I definitely could have held out at that point. That maybe I wouldn't have had to have the C-section, because I could have gotten out of the bed and maybe moved around to help move her body in the right position. I don't know. You just can't help but think if it doesn't go the way that you plan that maybe you could have done something differently. But who knows? So I wrote, for pre-admission, I would like to use natural means of inducement first, if that's possible. Then moving to sweeping of the membranes. I would like to have at least 2 sweeps done before progressing to like a hospital induction, which is what my doctor wants to do at 39 weeks. If a hospital induction is required, I would like to return home to start labor at my own time. So there are ways of being induced where you can be sent home. Now, again, during the pandemic, I highly doubt they're going to let me leave the hospital once I'm there. It kind of sucks because I would love to be able to go into labor, or if I had to be induced, be able to go home and be in the comfort of my own home. And part of the reason I hired my doula is so that she could come to my house when I'm laboring and help me labor. And then when she feels like I'm ready to go to the hospital at about 7 or 8 centimeters, that's when I wanted to go to the hospital. But, I just don't know at this point what's going to happen. So I only want my water broke if it's medically required. One of my main things too is the breaking of my water or my membranes. I only want my water broke if it is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, if it doesn't break on its own, I don't want it broke until like the baby is crowning. Usually at that point, when the baby is like ready to come out, is when most women's water will break naturally. So that is what I would prefer. And then I would like to give other induction methods ample opportunity to work before resorting to Pitocin or any other type of drug like that. If the Pitocin is medically required, I want to start with a very low dose and to be increased gradually and slowly and administered only after I reach 3 to 5 centimeters dilation until the labor is established. And then I would like to stop and attempt to continue labor without the artificial oxytocin. I really want to experience like a natural labor. So I want my body to create its own oxytocin. If my water does happen to break, I want to allow at least 24 hours before intervention. So I would rather get antibiotics rather than Pitocin or some sort of induction. So my ultimate goal is to have a completely natural labor. Now so I said I did some research. I actually have read a couple books now on hypnobirthing, and the information in the one book I read is just amazing. So aside from just the whole hypnobirthing experience, the information that is provided in that book is extremely good. So I'm going to link it for you guys below. I highly recommend reading it, even if you're not planning on doing like a natural birth or a hypnobirth. It is very, very informative. It like walks you through the whole process of birthing, and it goes through like all these different things that I'm talking about, and how like the Pitocin affects your body, and how just producing natural oxytocin can create just such an amazing experience for both you and your baby. So I personally will definitely try to use a lot of the techniques that I've learned through all of the hypnobirthing books and CDs and whatnot, MP3s rather, that I have listened to. So upon admission, if I am less than 4 centimeters dilated, I'd like to return home, which in my case, because I have hired a doula, I'm not going to go to the hospital if I'm only 4 centimeters or less than that, because I'll have my doula there to help me. And also because of the pandemic, I highly doubt they're going to send me home. I do not want discussion happening with pain tolerance and pain levels and epidurals and there are other options aside from an epidural to help relieve pain. With my daughter, I did not want an epidural, and I felt like I was being very pushed by a couple of the nurses to get the epidural. So I don't even want it brought up, honestly. And part of the hypnobirthing experience is to have it, like, you want to put yourself almost in a hypnotic state as if you're like daydreaming. So, and it's about a lot of breathing and visualizing, and, you know, it works best in a quiet, dim environment with not a lot of disruptions. So, like, for me, I don't want to be checked that often. I want to be checked like as little as possible, and if like only need be, because again, there's a lot of different reasons for that. It talks about it in the book that I'm gonna link for you guys. But ultimately too, when you're being checked and you feel like you're, you know, almost ready, and then they tell you that you're only 6 centimeters, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? So if you could hold off and just not be checked, that is ultimately probably the best for me anyways. That would be what I would want. And then I just have some notes for the staff to allow labor to take its natural course without references to moving things along. Please don't watch the clock, because I felt like my last labor they were trying to rush, and it ended up taking 50 hours. To be fully consulted before the induction of any medication, medical procedure. And then I would like for them to kind of talk to my husband before they come to me. And if my husband feels like it's something that needs to be mentioned to me, because like I said, I'm going to try to really like focus on my breathing and hypnobirthing methods. So if I could not be interrupted and just relay all messages to my husband, and if he feels like it is something that needs to be brought to my attention, then they will interrupt me. But otherwise, that is the goal. Comfort measures. I did write in here that I plan to use hypnobirthing techniques for comfort measure, such as active birth positions and movement, massage, breathing, relaxation, visualization. I want my husband present at all times. If I am able to drink fluids and eat light foods, that would be amazing. If labor is prolonged, if I'm able to snack, I want the freedom of choice to move or not move during my labor. I want to be able to change positions and assume labor positions of choice. So a lot of times, a lot of hospitals will want you laying on your back during labor, and I want to be able to be in the position that my body feels like it needs to be in at that time. If I need to get in the shower prior to my water being broke, I'd like the option to do that, which they did give me that option with my daughter. They did also provide me a birthing ball, so I put that on there. I would like that. And then I don't know if they have a birthing stool. I did not ask with my daughter, so I'm not sure. I'm sure they have one, but I put on there I would like access to that as well. Instruments and interventions. So I would like to be free of the blood pressure cuff between readings. In absence of a medical necessity, only intermittent monitoring of the baby's heart. With my daughter, they monitored her heart rate like the whole time. They had this band around my stomach, and it was extremely uncomfortable, and it was like if I moved in the slightest bit, the thing would move off of where her heartbeat was, and the nurses would come in and fix it. And it was just, I felt like that was one of the reasons too that I ended up getting the epidural, because it was like I felt like I could not move, like I was strapped to this heart rate machine. So I really would prefer not to have that on. So, and they also put an internal monitor on me when I got, after I had been there for so long. So unless the baby is in fetal distress, I do not want any internal monitoring done. No internal electronic monitoring. It could possibly pass infection to the baby by the puncture site of the electrode clip on the scalp. So I'd rather not even go there. And then I did put on here, I want minimum number of vaginal exams within reason during the labor until the urge to push. I don't want any augmentation of labor without discussion and explanation of need. And then during the birth of our baby, I would like the patience and understanding of the medical caregivers to refrain from any practice or procedure that could unnecessarily stand in the way of having the most natural birth possible. I would like to allow the natural birthing instincts to facilitate the descent of the baby as much as possible, with mother-directed birth breathing down until crowning takes place. So I never got to experience the pushing part, but in videos that I have seen, it is like controlled, how should I say? It is controlled by the doctors, the pushing, and it's also like they tell you when to push. They count, for you to push and hold your breath for 10 seconds or whatever, when realistically, that is not the way we are designed to have a child. Your body is made to naturally birth a baby, and believe it or not, you really don't even have to push to have a baby. It is really about how you breathe, so you can actually breathe your baby out, which is the safest way to have your baby. So I would prefer to have my child, to birth my child that way, opposed to being told when to push, like push now, count to 10. That's not really how your body is made to have a child. So I feel like I'm like going back to like I should be having a baby in the woods at this point, like like a mammal, but that's what we are. I mean, if you think about mammals having babies, nobody's there like coaching them how to push their baby out. You just do it. Your body just does it. I would like to, again, I think I had mentioned this, assume a birthing position of choice, and one that will least likely require an episiotomy or me tearing. if I can use a birthing stool or a squatting bar if they have one for the bed. Support with squatting during birthing or leaning over a birth ball. I want an episiotomy only if absolutely necessary. I would like use of suctioning device rather than forceps if assistance is medically necessary. I do want to use a mirror, which I did have one in the room with my daughter as well. If I could reach down and touch my baby and like pull it out myself, that would just be perfect. And then we don't know the gender of our child. I would like my husband to be the one to announce the gender of our baby. So he was able to do that with my daughter. So that was pretty cool. And then I want my husband also to remain with the baby in the event of a surgical procedure. My husband will be the one to cut the cord. I do want delayed cord clamping and cutting until the pulsation of the cord has ceased. I would like to try to start breastfeeding immediately. So if you start breastfeeding like right after your baby is born, it helps to naturally deliver the placenta. Otherwise, which I was unaware that this was even a thing, but you're actually given like, I don't know what it is that they give you, but it is some form of oxytocin, I believe, that they give you to help you deliver your placenta, where again, like your body is built to naturally deliver a placenta. So if you go to immediate breastfeeding, it helps to trigger those hormones and release them so that you can naturally deliver the placenta. And then if the doctor believes that I need the Pitocin, that must be what it is, Pitocin, that they give you then to deliver your placenta, then obviously they can give it to me. For the baby, I would like them to allow the vernix to be absorbed into the baby's skin and to delay like cleaning or rubbing, and if they have to, just to use a soft cloth when rubbing if absolutely necessary. My daughter actually was not born with the vernix, which is like the white coating over their body. It does start to, I think, dissolve at some point when the baby's in your belly. And because she was a week late, it just probably had all dissolved at that point. So, but because she was C-section, she also was cleaned pretty good after she was born. I would love to have immediate skin-to-skin contact and like delay the procedures on the baby if that is possible. Then I did put on here, if a C-section does become necessary, I would like the baby to remain on my chest while being stitched up. And if the baby requires separation from me, please allow my husband to be with the baby at all times. And then if an epidural does become necessary, I would like to try to follow still as much as my original birth plan as possible. I would prefer a narcotic or walking epidural so I can be more active in my birth and require less monitoring if that is something that's available to me. I would also like to be helped into a birthing position that uses gravity to aid in the birth of the baby instead of like lying flat on my back. And also if they could turn the epidural down prior to the birthing stage so I can gain feedback from my body in the effective pushing, so that again I'm not having to be told when I need to push. And that is it. That pretty much covers my birth plan. Like I said, it's 4 pages long. It might seem a little crazy, and I get that, but I also had a very crazy experience with my daughter, and I want to prevent that from happening at all costs. So like I said, I've done a lot of research, a lot of reading. I mean, the one book that I read is not a small book, It has a lot of good information. It makes a lot of sense to me. It would probably make sense if you read it too. But ultimately, that is what I'm going for. A natural, drug-free birth. So wish me the best of luck. It's coming up quickly, and I will definitely keep you guys updated. If you're not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss like my weekly pregnancy updates, because that's where I tell it all. And yeah, so that's everything. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that maybe it was somewhat informative to you. Check out the book that I linked below, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!